Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a completely surreal, mind-bending mystery from a fascinating text called The Cartography of Unstitched Skin, Navigating the Uncloseable Gap. Just imagine finding a body, or, well, what used to be a body, in an alley that, according to literally every map ever drawn, simply shouldn't exist. It's this wild blend of detective fiction, map-making, and deep philosophy, and we are going to unpack the whole thing.
To really wrap our heads around this, we got to start with the note. Clamped in the victim's right hand was a chilling, totally contradictory 11-word message. It reads, "I have been here before, but this is the first time." Now, the note had been exposed to the alley's strange moisture, so it looked almost like a dissolved musical score. It sounds impossible, right? But as you'll see, it's actually the absolute truth of exactly where he was standing.
So what exactly happens when a crime scene doesn't exist on any map? Our source introduces us to Inspector Greaves. He's this veteran detective standing over a perfectly arranged body in a 900-year-old alley in the Marion quarter of the city. But when his constable checks the current street registers, the historical surveys, even the aerial maps, nothing. The alley is completely absent from all cartographic records.
Section 1. The Unmapped Crime Scene. Investigating the Impossible.
Okay, this is far from your standard procedural crime scene, especially when you look at the physical evidence surrounding our victim, a librarian named Robert Saleh. His hands were arranged with this almost creepy administrative precision, and his body was placed exactly at the geometric center of the alley. And the alley itself? Absolutely wild. It's louder at night, but not from traffic. It's a low-frequency vibration, almost like the sound of deep breathing. The mortar in the walls contains 900-year-old extinct pollen. Plus, bizarrely, when you stand at the center and look out, the city literally appears farther away than the exits actually are. All of this points to the alley acting way more like a living, breathing entity than a normal paved street.
You know, encountering something like this triggers a very specific emotional response. Our source calls it appropriate fear. The characters standing in this space didn't feel standard panic or a sense of immediate danger. Instead, they felt the correct, proportionate awe you experience when you run into something that just completely exceeds the scale of human existence. They were sensing the alley's incredibly deep, ancient, accumulated presence.
Section 2. The Map and the Territory. Representation versus reality.
So let's pivot from the physical crime scene to the fascinating philosophical puzzle at the absolute core of this mystery. To really get this tension between representation and reality, we need to look at a concept from a brilliant cartographer in the text named Ines Castellan. She calls it the lag. Basically, it's the gap between a map and the current state of the territory it's supposed to represent. Because the physical world is always shifting, right? Roads close, buildings get torn down, rivers change course. So the second a map is printed, boom, it instantly becomes a historical document.
This creates a huge tension. On one side, you have the map, this fixed, static representation. It's the model that precedes our experience, but it's always lagging behind reality. On the other side, you've got the territory, the fluid physical reality, the constantly shifting world of the not yet. And what's happened over time is that the maps of this city have actually started dictating reality, creating a literal unmapped gap, which is the alley itself, right between the paper map and the actual ancient streets.
Section 3. Closing the Circuit. The Triad of Discovery.
Now you might be wondering, what does a sentient, completely unmapped gap actually want from the people who find it? Well, to safely witness this alley without being totally destroyed by its immense 900-year-old energy, you have to close the circuit. And doing that requires three very specific philosophical perspectives held simultaneously. First, you need an investigator, like Inspector Greaves, to approach the space without any prior conclusions. Second, you need a cartographer, like Ines Castellan, to translate the place's self-knowledge into a readable form. And finally, you need a theorist, like Dr. Yael Sommer, to put the whole event into a framework broad enough to actually contain it.
And that brings us right back to our victim, Robert Saleh. We finally understand his tragic fate. See, he discovered this unmapped alley completely alone. And his fatal error? He was a brilliant archivist, but he was arrogant enough to try and act as the investigator, the cartographer, and the theorist all at the exact same time. But a single human nervous system just isn't built to distribute that much conceptual weight. Because he tried to hold the positions of three different people, his selfhood literally dissolved into the alley's accumulated attention.
Section 4. A Load-Bearing Gap. Why we need the unknown.
This leads us to why Inspector Greaves makes a really unusual police decision in the aftermath.
He decides this missing alley shouldn't just be added to a new municipal map. He realizes that the alley is what the text calls a load-bearing gap. Think of it as a gap that is actually structural to the very thing it appears to be a deficiency of. If you mapped it, you would destroy the exact tension that keeps the city alive. It's a huge takeaway. Some mysteries, some unknown spaces, they aren't mistakes to be corrected. They're actually the structural foundations we rely on to create meaning.
This concept gives the unmapped alley two distinct, incredibly beautiful names. The first is Erste Gasse des Noch Nicht, or First Alley of the Not Yet, representing the potential future approaching actualization. The second is Letzte Gasse des Immer Schon, the last alley of the always already, representing the ancient persistent foundation of the city. So, mind-bendingly, it is both the city's future potential and its ancient past happening at the exact same time.
To really grasp how this works, let's superimpose the theoretical layers of this city one by one. The first layer is topological phenomenology. Sounds super complex, but just think of it as a philosophical map showing the tension between potential states, what could be, versus actualized states, what actually is. Then we add the second layer, the linguistic structural diagram. As media theorist Yael Sommer points out, this represents the unclosable gap between a word or a sign and the actual physical thing it signifies. Human language is always reaching for reality, but it never completely touches it. There's always a distance. When you stack these conceptual layers together, a breathtaking composite image emerges. The city isn't just a bunch of buildings and roads. It is a sustained act of collective attention. It's a 900-year-old attempt by millions of minds reaching across the gap, trying to make the unthinkable into reality. And the alley? It's the physical, unclosable embodiment of that collective reach. Section 5, the city's not yet, the future of the gap. So, why does this deeply conceptual mystery actually matter for how you view the world? Check out this powerful realization from Dr. Sommer in the source text. The simulation is not a prison, the simulation is the work. This is a massive shift in perspective. Our maps, our models, our words, they aren't trapping us in a fake reality. They are the vital, creative tools we actively use to build reality. The effort to map the world is literally what creates the world. Which leads to a fascinating, kind of bittersweet aftermath. In a twist of total mundane fate, the city's original cartographic archive is accidentally demolished, which means all current maps are now just copies of copies. The gap literally just got larger, but the configuration survives. Ines, the cartographer, creates a whole new kind of map that charts unclosable distances as directions rather than locations. Inspector Greaves retires, intentionally leaving the alley unmapped to preserve its load-bearing gap, and beautifully, the cycle begins all over again when a 9-year-old child wanders into the unmapped alley, sensing the profound superimposition for herself. It's a breathtaking look at how we construct our world, and more importantly, the spaces we leave undefined. So my final question to you is this. Are you just blindly navigating the map you've been handed, or are you ready to stand in the unclosable gap and truly witness the territory? Embrace the unknown spaces in your life, you guys. They might just be the load-bearing gaps holding everything up. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring the gaps.